Thank you for joining me back here on the last segment of today's show, talking about my predictions for how the AFC East division is going to shape out after the entire regular season. We are getting closer and closer to the start of the NFL season, so we're going to do some of these last predictions here, starting with the AFC East. We just talked about a few of these teams actually throughout today's episode, so we're going to start with one of them here at the fourth spot, and unfortunately, pretty obvious answer, I would say. The New England Patriots, to me, are going to come in last just this year. We're talking about the beginning, the very groundwork, very much the groundwork level of building this new era for the Patriots, right? We're in the Gerard Mayo era now. We're past Bill Belichick. Everything is pretty much new with this team. New general manager, new quarterback, a lot of young, exciting talent that they're ready to develop in the next couple of years. But right now, with how everybody else is in a more of a win now mode with their very settled, very experienced rosters, I just think the Patriots, with how everything's played out, you trying to figure out when to start Drake May, trying to figure out those issues that you had with the offensive line, new head coach, rookie head coach in Gerard Mayo, how does that all play itself out? And not to mention that they have the toughest schedule in the NFL from any of the teams that came in last place in all of the divisions across the NFL. Of all those teams that came in last, the Patriots have the hardest schedule out of all of them, so not really helping their case to surprise anybody in 2024. Again, the rest of the teams are just further along their processes, so I think the Patriots have a rough year this year, but that necessarily isn't a bad thing, right? You figure out a lot of things. I would love for them to keep Gerard Mayo. I don't want this to be a situation where they fire the head coach for no reason, obviously, knowing that this is a very early, young team. There's no reason to get rid of him because it's not going to be necessarily a pretty sight for this team this year. Everyone's going to go through growing pains, so the more consistent some of these factors stay, I think will only benefit the Patriots going forward. But to me, easy answer, they were going to be last. They are going to be last this year, in my opinion. Then you move on to number 3, and I think this could come to be a surprise to a lot of people, right? I'm just not buying the Bills hype for right now. I think it's too much. It could potentially be too much for Josh Allen, right? There's too many unknowns, and while you could feel great about some of those unknowns, like the wide receiver room, Khalil Shakir still being there, Keon Coleman, a lot of excitement around him, a lot of excitement around Dalton Kincaid and how everything plays out with him from his rookie year. I just feel like outside of that, how does the rest of this offense look? Their offensive line is pretty decent. They've done a great job, obviously, over the last few years, but there's a lot of unknowns for Josh Allen. Who's gonna become his number one target, right? Is it gonna be Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid? How quickly does Keon Coleman develop in this system? How, again, does James Cook develop in this system as their running back? Do they continue to be a run-heavy team to kind of mask some of the unknowns in the passing game, or do teams, double down on stopping the run, forcing them to pass, and are they willing to step up to that challenge? A lot of things that I'm just not sure of in the offense. It's very over-reliant on Josh Allen, I believe, and that's sort of what they tried to get away from last year when they went more towards a run-heavy offense, but because they had the weapons on the outside that they could still pass at an efficient level, now Stefon Diggs is gone, and I'm not sure that's going to mix well now with this young talent. So that's on the offensive side of the ball, but on defense too, losing guys like Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White, and having Matt Milano get injured pretty much for the entire year, that's at basically every level, mainly the second to third level with Poyer, Hyde, White, and Matt Milano. That's a lot of your experienced leaders and guys that you just rely upon on that side of the ball are just gone now. And while you have guys like Ed Oliver, AJ Epinesa looking pretty good, that's just on the front line. They're not going to always stand up to a lot of these teams. And once you get to the second and third level, who's going to stand out and, make a stop for the Bills at that point in time? those are some of the questions I have on the defensive side of the ball. And then I just feel like, again, it's too much pressure, not only on Josh Allen, but on that defense as well, because a lot of the times when Josh was coming up developing, there was those issues with turnovers, but, I'm past it. But a lot of those times, this defense stood up, created some turnovers, and made a lot of splash plays. And now I'm not so sure they have the capability to rely on that defense as much this year with all those losses that I mentioned. And if they're able to figure something out, I feel like it's going to take time anyway with a lot of new pieces. So how do they navigate those waters, and how quickly do they get everybody up to speed? There could be some growing pains that I think could halt them in trying to win the AFC East title yet again. So that's why I kind of had them treading water at number 3. I feel like they're going to be good games here or there, bad games here or there. They're just going to be up and down all year, pretty much, is how I'm feeling about the Bills. Which means at number 2, very tough in the end, trying to decide between, obviously, the two teams left, the Jets and the Dolphins. But I went with the Jets here just because, obviously, the Hassan Reddick thing is a distraction. And I just finished talking about how big of an impact he can have on the Jets if they just got out of their own way, essentially, with that last step. But you look at this team, the uneasiness, I think I would say, with Aaron Rodgers. Every Jets fan is praying every night that nothing happens to Aaron Rodgers again. He's coming off of a very serious injury to that Achilles, so how does he look? How does he navigate throughout an entire NFL regular season? Any injury really to some of these guys, like Mike Williams coming off of a serious knee injury, Aaron Rodgers, like I just mentioned, Breece Hall is a couple years removed now from a very serious knee injury himself, and their offensive line as well. Tyron Smith, known for not being the healthiest guy in his latter years in the NFL. You have Morgan Moses as well, dealing with some injuries over the last few years. Any injury to any of these guys, I feel like would really become such a problem to this Jets team, because all of those positions are very important in any team. So the Jets needing all these guys to stay healthy, I think, could be something to look out for. Again, it's so unpredictable to try and prepare for injuries because, you don't know when they're going to happen. But that is something that does make me a little bit nervous with this Jets team. And also, it's not like their schedule is overly hard. They have the 12th toughest schedule in the NFL. What's something interesting is that their bye week doesn't come until week 12. So that's a lot of repetitive games leading up until pretty much the other half of the NFL regular season. So again, going back to that health point, how healthy can they be until they get to that bye week? Are they going to get there and be, super relieved that it finally came because they are overwhelmed with the injuries that they have? Potentially, hopefully not. Or are they going to get there relatively healthy, recharge to all those players, and really attack the second half of the year with full intent, fully healthy as you can be? And that usually makes the difference when we're talking about week 12 to week 17 or week 18, who shows up the healthiest and who is in the greatest form at that point in time. Those usually make the biggest difference at that point of the year. So that's really what kind of worries me with the Jets. They have a great team, obviously. That's why it was such a hard decision. But that unpredictable aspect with injuries and how catastrophic it could be to the Jets, I couldn't put them at number 1 for that reason, which means that the Dolphins are obviously taking up that number 1 spot. They should have won the division last year. They were good enough to win it last year, but they choked away those 2 games to the Buffalo Bills. And the record against winning teams is a concern. They've lost their last 6 straight games against winning teams last year. Any team with a winning record, the Dolphins have just failed to beat them, and that's a pretty big concern. I'm not going to lie. That's something noteworthy to take into account, but I just feel like they do have one of the easiest schedules and the least difficult schedule in this entire division. So for the amount of talent that they have, the offensive firepower that can compete with anybody in the NFL, having one of the easiest schedules, I think, will benefit them greatly. But again, it'll go back to that question of can they beat the good teams when it matters? And I don't know exactly how many of those great teams that they will face this year, but they're going to benefit overall from having an easy schedule with Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert, Odell Beckham Jr. once he becomes healthy, Tua being in a prove-it year, trying to validate that contract that he has. They have all the weapons, and I think that this offense is as good as any, definitely in this division, as good as any team in this division, as good as any offense in this division, arguably the best offense in terms of explosiveness and just can change the momentum of a game in any point in time. When you have guys like Waddle and Tyreek, that's the kind of level that we're talking about. And also, defenses, their defense does have some guys too. You know, you look at Javon Holland, Jalen Ramsey, Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips. Those guys did make a big impact last year, and I think just having another year under their belt together will be something to look forward to with this defense, having that continuity there. And Mike McDaniel, rightly so, getting a contract extension. I think he's definitely shown enough to be considered one of the best coaches in this division. No, well, actually, probably the best coach in this division, I would say. Sean McDermott's probably the other one, but Mike McDaniel, I think, has definitely proven a lot in just the 2 years with the Dolphins, and I think it says a lot. They did right by giving him that contract extension, and a lot of the times when you have a coach of that level, it tends to make the difference, and I think this year, everybody is facing this year with a lot more urgency, trying to win that division after just collapsing last year. I think they're facing this year with a lot more of a different mentality that will benefit them, and I think they're going to win it this year. I think they came close last year. They have enough to do it, and I think this year is going to be their year to give them as much of an advantage in the playoffs, right, to finally win a playoff game. But that's it. That's the predictions of the AFC East. Let me know if you guys agree, disagree with a lot of the points that I made, and if you guys have a different opinion, let me know in the comments section as well. But that'll wrap it up for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the show, as well as following the network on all forms of social media. And to catch more of this show and more content around the NFL, check out both YouTube channels, the GSMC Podcast Network channel and the GSMC Sports Network channel too. Catch a lot more content around the NFL in a variety of different ways. And to catch more of these live episodes, tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time to discuss more topics around this league with me, Manny Maradiegue, as your host. Thanking you once again, and I look forward to seeing you guys back here again tomorrow, just one day away from the start of the NFL regular season.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to